and welcome back. Ray Chrisman here from R.L. Chrisman Metalworks. Well, as you can probably tell, I got the lathe all set up and wired up, got it running. I've been making my first chips with it. Been going through all the alignments on it. I'm just finishing up with the last alignment here. I'll show you the end of that process, and then I'll back up a little bit and show you the other procedures that I've gone through. But anyway, what I'm doing here is trying to get the tailstock aligned to be truly in line with the spindle. I've done this a couple of times here, and I'm down to what I think should be the last adjustment. Right now, on this piece of brass here, I've been turning it down a little at a time. Right now, this end of it is about 4/1000ths larger than what this end is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen the tailstock lock here, and then I'm going to use the two adjustment screws, one on this side and one on the back side. I'm going to move the tailstock over that way about 2/1000ths of an inch, which should get me centered. I'll tighten everything back down, make another cut. It should be my last pass on it. So let's get on with that a little bit, and we'll see if this gets me within the limits I want to be. I'd like to get the tailstock right on if I can. Like I said, I'm within 4/1000ths of an inch right now. So let's adjust this a little bit. First thing I need to do is loosen up this lock back here. Like that. Okay, I need to move the tailstock that way, and to do that, these screws are kind of backwards from what you would think. I need to back this one out and turn this one on the back side in, which will move the tailstock that way. So I'm going to loosen this one a little bit. Got my dial indicator set on 0. I know with the camera angle you can't really see it, but I can here. Actually, just loosening that right there moved the tailstock 2/1000ths. Let me see if I can tighten the back one a little bit, see if it changes anything, which it did. Put me back to 0 again. I have to kind of work these screws back and forth against each other here. So let's go down like so. Okay, work these two screws against each other. I've moved the tailstock that way 2/1000ths. Tighten up this lock screw back here again and make sure it doesn't change anything. There we go. There's my 2/1000ths that I needed. Let me move tailstock back forward. Well, I've already got it forward. Let me lock the tailstock back down. Turn the quill back out into my piece there. Lock the quill. Take my indicator off of there. Okay. Turn the lathe on here. speed set at about 755 RPM, and I've got fairly slow feed rate going on. Let's see what the difference is. We've got it. I've got 600 thousandths on both ends there. So my tailstock is now aligned perfectly true and in center with the spindle bore. Let me walk around here a little bit and show you some of the other things I've done. I'm going to take the camera off of the tripod. Might be a little shaky. I'll try to hold it as steady as I can to show you some of the other things that I've done here. Okay, I've taken the cover off the end of the headstock here. Move around this way just a little bit. One of the first things I checked was these belts. They should be tensioned so that when you push on them, you've only got about 1/4 of an inch of movement there, and that's the proper tensioning on those belts. So I checked that first. The next thing I did was to check the oil levels, and there's 2 of them. One is right here on the headstock. I don't know how if that's going to focus in on that very well or not, but there's an oil level gauge right here. This headstock is an oil bath for the gears in here. When this arrived, the headstock was empty of oil, so I had to fill this up. The manual on it suggests a 36 weight hydraulic oil. So that's what I did. I filled up the headstock here. The fill plug for that is up here on the top, right here. You just take this out with one of the Allen wrenches, pour the oil in there until the oil level on this gauge right here is reading about halfway to 3/4 of the way up on that sight glass. The next spot I checked was right down here on the front of the apron. There's another sight glass right here for the oil bath inside the apron for the gears in there. This one came from the factory already full of oil. As you can see, it's just over halfway up on that sight glass, which is fine. The fill plug for that is right here on the top of the apron. So I did those 2 things, or 3 things actually. Made sure that the belts were tensioned properly, checked the oil level in the headstock, checked the oil level here in the the apron. The next thing that I did, according to the book, was check the spindle alignment. This particular spindle, or headstock rather, has an adjustment on it to actually true the spindle bore of the headstock up so that it's perfectly parallel with the ways on the lathe. The way that you would adjust that, in this case I didn't have to adjust it, it was right on from the factory, but you would loosen up the headstock bolts. There's 2 of them there. There's 2 more on the back here, which I can't really get the camera in to see them. But then you have adjustment screws right back in here. There's one here and there's one on the other side of the headstock there. And you could actually adjust these to pivot the headstock left and right until you get the bore trued up with the ways. The way the book suggests doing that is to go ahead and mount a piece of metal in the chuck, leaving about 200 millimeters or 300 millimeters sticking out of the chuck, and then to take a cut on that piece of metal, just a light pass, and then use a micrometer. You want to make that pass about 200 millimeters long. Use a micrometer and check it at both ends. Now this is without using the tailstock. This is just with the metal sticking out of the chuck. Measure it at both ends after taking that cut, and if it's the same size on both ends, the spindle bore is true with the ways. If one side was bigger than the other one, then you would need to pivot that headstock to true it up with the ways. In this case it was perfect. I did that 200 millimeter long cut. I checked both ends with the micrometer and they were perfect. So I didn't make any adjustments on the headstock. I did level the lathe up I didn't go out and buy a precision level. I just used the level that I had. I leveled it in both directions. The level across here to make sure it was level here on the headstock end. The level down here on the tailstock end across the ways. Making sure that that was level also. With the level running down the length of the ways to make sure that it was level in that direction. So all of the first adjustments and checks have been done. Got the lathe leveled up, like I said, check the belts, check the oil levels, check the headstock alignment with the ways. And as you saw here in the first part of the video, I was just finishing up with the tailstock alignment. Made the last pass on that bar there, and got the tailstock truly aligned, so that when I made that cut on that brass bar there, it was the same size at both ends, which tells me that the tailstock is truly in line with the spindle bore. So all of the adjustments have been made. One other thing that I have done is the spindle run-in, or break-in. What you're supposed to do is, using the speed controls here, start out with the lowest speed, which would have this handle over here to the left for low range. And then I would be running off of this handle all the way over on the 70. Start with the lowest spindle speed, run the lathe for about 5 minutes, then increment up to the next spindle speed, run it for about 5 minutes, and all the way through. Shift over to the high range, so then you're working on here, and run through all of the high range speeds, running each one for about 5 minutes. After you go through all the different speeds on the lathe for about 5 minutes, the spindle is supposed to be broke in and you're ready to start turning stock. So I did all that before I started turning anything on the lathe. I didn't show you all of these steps. I was in a hurry to get this thing fired up and going, but it's been sitting here for several months before I actually got around to it. So anyway, the lathe is all set up now. Everything has been adjusted and aligned. And as you can see, I've started making some chips on it. We're going to, in future videos, get on to some project-based videos here, making some small projects using the lathe, and going through some of the different turning operations to make those projects. But before we get on too far with the project-based videos for the lathe, the next thing that I need to do, the next video that'll be out, I will be moving my mill drill. I've got an RF31 mill drill that I bought at the same time I bought this lathe, and I will be moving it in here and uncrating it, getting it lifted up, mounted on the stands, and go through an alignment procedure on it to get it all ready to go, so that I have both machines sitting here and ready when we start getting into the project-based videos. But anyway, thank you for joining me here today. Wanted to give you a quick recap on some of the alignments that I've done on this lathe. It is all set up and ready to go now. Thank you for joining me here today, and happy machining. It's Ray Chrisman again from R.L. Chrisman Metalworks.